In this video, I'm going to talk about this case right here, which is the APNX Creator C1. Now, APNX is more or less a new brand that just entered the market, so they reached out to a lot of tech channels, including us, to check this new case out and to see what they put together here. And there are definitely a lot of things that I really like about this case. I really like the interesting color choice that changes depending on from which angle you're looking at it, which is really cool in my opinion. And I really love the mesh panels all around that are combined with 4 addressable RGB fans to make sure you get that good out-of-the-box thermal performance. So let's check it out a bit more, let's see how it performs and if it's worth considering. Let's begin. APNX stands for Advanced Performance Nexus, and as you can read on their website, their focus is to bring high-end premium products with innovative designs to the market, starting with this Creator C1 case. And even though APNX is a new name, it is actually a part of Pro Gamerswear Group, that also owns Aerocool, and they kind of work together to create this new APNX sub-brand, so they do come from some form of experience. Now, the Creator C1 is a mid-tower ATX case, so it is not overly large, but you will be able to fit most components you have in mind easily. I have the Chroma Flare version, but if you prefer a more mainstream look, you can also get it in white or black. But the Chroma Flare definitely stands out in my opinion because it changes color depending on how you look at it, and from one angle it will be completely purple, while from another angle it will look completely blue, and that is such an interesting and unique feature that I personally haven't seen before. And while it's definitely not for everyone, I do think it's always nice to see brands trying something new and something different instead of always doing the same old thing. I do wish they combined this color of panels with a white chassis as well, not just with black, because in my opinion, it would have worked a bit better. And then especially so if you're going for a white build inside. I mean, they already have a white chassis, so why not combine it with Chroma Flare panels as well? Or they can at least offer both options so people can decide what they like better. Anyway, the quality of this case is just great. The panels and chassis are all metal and the fit and finish look flawless. I really like the curved edges on the front that again just make it a little bit different while still keeping the clean design look. They also kept the bottom part of the case closed instead of making the feet a bit more visible from the front, which yet again makes it look a bit cleaner, but unfortunately it also means that the bottom filter will have to be removed from the back. The right side panel is a little bit different as well, as you can see here, because it splits in the middle, leaving you with a separate front and a separate back part. Now, the front part is seamlessly connected to the front panel, which you will have to take off if you want to reach the dust filter on the fan intakes. And the back part will cover the cables of your build pretty much. Now, the panels themselves do come off easily without any tools, using the same click mechanism that we've seen on a few cases before this one, and that works really well in my opinion. The front I/O is pretty standard. You get 2 USB-A ports, 1 USB Type-C port, and a combined audio jack. Plus, you get a power button and a button to change the settings of the built-in RGB controller. The inside of the case is relatively standard looking. It is not extremely large, but there is definitely plenty of space. You can fit air coolers up to 166 millimeters in height and GPUs up to almost 40 centimeters of length. So basically, you can fit every air-cooled GPU that is currently on the market. The default panel that is next to the motherboard includes a nice GPU holder, and even though the case does have a theoretical vertical GPU mounting option, it does require a separate mounting kit that isn't included with the case and that you will have to buy separately. You can also remove that side panel if you need to use a larger extended ATX motherboard, but in my opinion that might be a bit tight, so going for a nice ATX board and keeping that side bracket will look best in my opinion. You can also use that space to mount 3 more fans next to your motherboard if you prefer that look, but as you will see later on, the thermal performance is just great out of the box and there is no reason to add more fans to this case unless you're just going to do it for the aesthetics. The case does come with three 140mm fans on the front and another 120mm fan in the back. The fans are a little bit thicker than usual. They're 30mm instead of 25, which, according to APNX, should make them perform significantly better. They have rounded edges as well, so they fit the case design quite well, and they also have addressable RGB LEDs, so you can choose and set any color scheme you like. There is enough space for another three 120mm fans or two 140mm fans up top, and there is enough space for a 360mm radiator as well. Now, I do wish that the top had a few more mounting options because I do think it puts the radiator a bit more to the back and close to the motherboard, and even though it didn't interfere with the motherboard nor memory modules that I have in this build, I just kind of prefer having the radiator a bit more out. You do get a PSU shroud as well, which is a standard nowadays, and the shroud itself is completely closed on the side, so you cannot see your power supply at all, but it is ventilated at the top. In the back, there is plenty of space for cable management, and you get some Velcro straps to keep it all nice and neat. You also get this bracket that is generally meant to either add more storage or a theoretical 11th fan, but if you don't have patience for cable management, you can just use this bracket to keep the cables in their spot, and you can then easily just click the side panel back on. The case does come with a fan hub and an addressable RGB hub, so if you have an addressable RGB water cooler that uses a regular addressable RGB connector, you can just easily sync it up with the rest of the fans or use the front panel RGB controller to quickly change them all. Now, for my build here, I decided to go for a proper high-end complete AMD setup. So I have an AMD Ryzen 9 7950 X3D in a Gigabyte X670 Elite AX motherboard, and for the GPU, I went with the Radeon RX 7900 XTX Gaming OC. For the memory, I have these new Corsair Dominator titanium modules that are specifically made for AMD CPUs, 64 gigabytes in total. And to keep the CPU nice and cool, I'm using the new Corsair iQ Link H150i RGB cooler. To power it all up, I went with the 1000 watt Seasonic Vertex power supply. And it was a very easy build because you do have a lot of space in a big case like this one. And if I really had to nitpick, the only thing that I would have done differently is that position of the 360mm radiator at the top, as I mentioned before. It's really pushed to the motherboard a bit too much, while having it a bit closer to the glass would give you a bit more space for the cables at the top, and it would also make the fans at the top align a bit more with the fan in the back, which I would really like to see. But let's see how this case performs. In a pure CPU stress test, the thermals actually look closer to what you would expect to see from a system being idle, but that is also because these X3D CPUs are very power efficient, and a big water cooler like this one just pushes that little bit of heat they do generate directly out of the case straight away. Still, seeing internal case temperatures of around 30 degrees for a case running a CPU workload with the fans limited to a maximum of 40 decibels is just really great. While gaming and generating some heat from the GPU as well, the case actually had a bit of work to do. Now, running Cyberpunk 2077 with the 2.0 patch at 1440p resolution and with all the settings on, including ray tracing, the GPU alone was pushing over 400 watts of heat into the system. Still, the temps looked great. The GPU memory and hotspot were at around 80 degrees, but the cores themselves sat below 60. The CPU came in at only 47 degrees Celsius as well. The internal case temp was 40 degrees, and other components like the motherboard sensor, VRMs, memory, and SSD were only slightly above that, which is all completely fine and actually very decent given how much heat the GPU was generating. And again, all this was with the noise limited to 40 decibels at a 50 centimeter distance. And you shouldn't really expect any issues with a case that has ventilation on most sides, plus 3 large intakes and a fan in the back. But it is still good to confirm that it does perform really well with this high-end system, so you definitely don't have to worry if you go for something a bit more reasonable. and there is more than enough headroom for if you go for something a bit more unreasonable like the 14th Gen i9. In terms of pricing, the APNX Creator C1 should cost you 139 euros or dollars for the base black and white models, or 159 euros or dollars for this Chroma Flare version. Now that puts it in the premium mid-range-ish segment, which means that it is a bit more than what you realistically have to spend on any case, to be honest. But this price also puts it next to the Corsair 5000D, NZXT H7 Flow RGB, or the Meshify 2, and that positioning does feel reasonable. It just belongs there because it is really well built, the materials are great, it has a good finish, and you do get 4 addressable RGB fans plus a fan and an RGB hub, and it just performs really well. So, like with a lot of other cases on the market, it will come down to the design. Now, the Chroma Flare version is definitely something unique and something that will set it apart from other cases, but other than a few details being a bit different, the overall design is very clean but also pretty standard. And I personally always like the less is more approach. So if you like this particular design and if the price is right, this is definitely a case to consider. This is all I had for today. I really hope you liked this video. If you did and you want to see more content like this one, please do consider clicking that subscribe button so you never miss my future uploads. And last but definitely not the least, a big shout out to APNX for sending this case and for sponsoring this video. I'm actually quite curious to see what their next product will be. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!